Hello farmers and welcome to the harvest season. My name is Al.
And my name is Rochelle.
And we're actually going to talk about farming games this time.
Woo!
Woo!
Yay! I love farming games.
I also enjoy the games where we farm. So, first of all, we're going to talk about some feedback because that's what we do first and we enjoy feedback. Send us feedback.
My favorite part of every episode, talking to you guys. You know, interestingly enough, I was thinking about, this is not related, but I was thinking about this earlier. I literally never say the phrase, you guys, unless I'm recording a podcast. And I don't understand it. Like, I'm a y'all person. I always say y'all. It's great. It's perfect. It's gender neutral. Every time I'm on a podcast, you guys. I hate it. I don't know why I do this.
There's something that happens in your brain when you're doing something like a podcast or some other public speaking that changes you into a different person.
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend who was telling me that I very definitely have a podcast voice.
Yeah.
And this is not what I sound like in real life. Presumably, that would mean that you wouldn't actually be able to understand me if I was doing my normal voice. Who knows?
No one knows.
Although, even in real life, my accent has been toned down a lot over the years because, well, when me and my wife first got together, she couldn't understand me.
Oh, that's an A+ love story.
Okay.
I was going to comment more, but then I was like, no, this isn't the Rochelle talks about Al's relationship podcast.
Yeah, no, please no. Thank you for your email.
Thanks for your email. Everyone else, please send us more emails.
Yes. We also have a review on iTunes from Will_Dax the Wonder. Thank you for your review. It was good to read.
When you say usernames or internet handles, do you always say the underscore? I think...
Yes.
I think about this a lot, like, what is the proper way to say a handle? Because, like, I wouldn't say a dash or an underscore unless I was telling someone how to reach that person, if that makes sense. Like, you would say it in a Twitter handle because if you tell someone, go to this, but you don't say the underscore, they'll go to the wrong place. But if you just say it in conversation, like referring to a person, I wouldn't say it. Kind of like you wouldn't say the lowercase x, uppercase x, lowercase x at either end of a username from those days.
I guess it kind of stems from the fact that these sort of things shouldn't really be used for conversation, and it's more about identification. And so realistically, it should have like a real name field, which is where you put whatever it is. It doesn't have to be a real name, but it's, you know, whatever you want to be referred to as, whereas the handle tends to be something that is, you know, unique identifying information for you.
Oh, interesting. This is interesting. This is fascinating. I don't feel that way. But I grew up on the internet. So no.
Well, I didn't.
No, not that you didn't, but like, I mean this like very seriously. Like, I literally grew up on the internet. I had internet since I could remember. I was born the year that internet started becoming a popular thing amongst the people. But I spent a ton. Like, I didn't have a lot of like meat space friends around me, and I mostly had friends online. And so, like, I'm used to seeing and referring to people as whatever their Yahoo username or, like, whatever their Gaia Online username is. So I would actually take someone's handle as, like, you can just refer to that person as their handle. That's fine. Like, it's just another name of a person.
Yeah, so I think that I used to have that opinion of things because similarly to you, I spent a lot of time on the internet when I was a kid. It's easy to do that when people at school don't like you.
Big mood.
But I think that things change over time, and the way that internet services have changed is that it's much more common now to have a handle as well as a display name. And therefore, the display name tends to be the thing that is put in your face. And also, you've got to remember that being a software developer, I think of these things behind the scenes as well.
Yeah.
And realistically, that username only exists to be a unique identifier, right? Because you need a way to refer to an account that can only mean that account. And sure, it could just be a random string of letters and numbers, but it's better for it to be something more recognizable.
But I wonder if this also has to do with like the places you hang out online, but also like, okay, one thought at a time, because like, for example, it's a lot easier to say that about like Twitter, where you can have a name and a handle that can be separate, than like Gaia Online, my old stomping grounds, where you just had your username, you know, like the name and the handle are the same thing.
Yeah, I think that's my point though. I think that is the progression of technology.
No, but what I'm saying is that like, I think that's just different forms of online spaces. Like there's a difference between a Twitter space and a forum space, you know?
I'm not sure I agree, but I don't think we're going to end up with any more constructive discussion around that. I think that
but then
more
also,
modern
like,
things
I have a question.
Okay.
What about the people on Twitter who make their name, like their name field name, just like really random weird stuff?
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't refer to them by that, though. Like, you wouldn't say, like, yeah, and I was talking to my friend, spaceships are the best, alien emoji, spaceship emoji, scream emoji.
Well,
you know
yeah,
what I mean? Like,
but then I would have an issue. I generally have an issue with people who do that. So,
I'm fine with
let me
people who do
rephrase that. Let me rephrase that. I generally have an issue when people do that, not with the people themselves, obviously.
Because it makes things messy and complicated?
Yes, and I like things neat and easy to deal with. Whereas
I am quite content to live in the flowing chaos of the universe.
I quite often flit between order and anarchy. Like sometimes several times a day. Like when talking about, for example, language, I will go between language is structured for a reason. There are rules that we need to enforce, and if we don't, then all of society breaks down to language doesn't even matter, as long as you kind of vaguely get the idea that someone's trying to say, what does anything matter anyway?
Descriptivism versus prescriptivism?
Yeah.
Language?
Yeah. Sure. That sounds about right. I'll have to Google those words, but based on the structure of those words, sure. But as I've said, language is fluid, so who knows what you actually mean by those words. That's
a descriptivist point of view of just saying, like, this is the world and this is the language, is how it functions in the world. And in such a case, it is fluid and things don't necessarily follow the rules. Whereas a prescriptivist perspective would be more like, these are the rules and you must follow the rules, otherwise you are incorrect. So. Yeah. And I go between those two over all the time. I'm pretty solidly in one camp. I bet I can guess which. I bet you can guess. This has been Language Talk with Alan Rochelle. See you next time. This is especially funny because for those who are not me or Rochelle, it'll be fun to know that we had a very long discussion before we started recording as to how much news we're going to cover in this episode. we didn't want it to be too much. And then we've just spent 10 minutes talking about language and online handles. And well, we'll see how much gets into the final episode. We'll see. So thank you for your review and thank you for your email. We look forward to more. So, Rochelle, what are you playing? Oh, heck. This might be a long one. I'm going to make this as short as humanly possible. Okay, good. I caved in and I bought My Time at Portia on the PC. Oh, wait, is that how it's said? You know? We're going to have real problems with this, aren't we? If you ask the voice actors for the game, it's either Portia or Portia or 2 or 3 other pronunciations. So I don't think it matters. Language is fluid. I hate this so much. This happens all the time, right? Because, especially, I think, I suspect it's especially difficult for us because we have aphantasia. And so that can also, I don't know, does yours extend to voices as well? Yeah. Yeah. So
we can't hear specific voices. There is still something going on there, but it's kind of difficult to explain what it is. So I certainly struggle with pronunciations of words in my head, and I always get myself wrapped up in these things, and then obviously everybody does this where they kind of assume that it's said one way until they hear someone say it a different way. But I feel like it's more awkward when you have a very limited inner voice.
Yeah. And I think like I kind of just decide to pronounce something some way until I hear it differently, and then I decide, do I like it my way or that way? And then I go that way. Like for me, what it is that I had no idea how to pronounce it. And then there's voice acting in this game. So I heard like 2 or 3 different voices say it 2 or 3 different ways. And I just kind of settled on one that feels natural. So
I'm not going to say the name this episode because I need some time to say it multiple times before I commit it to recording.
You can say it however you want. It's fine.
Yep, that's fine.
Language is
how I'm
fluid.
How I'm going to say it is silence just now.
Perfect. So I caved and bought My Time at Portia on the PC, which I was trying really hard not to do. You have to understand, I don't have a setup to comfortably play PC games right now, which doesn't mean I can't play them. It means that how I have to physically sit to play them is not particularly comfortable. Keeping that in mind, I've already clocked 55 hours in this game.
55 hours?
55 hours of
You've had it for less than a week, haven't you?
playing uncomfortably. No, I've had it for about a week.
55? That's more than I've worked.
It's more than I worked this week. Minding that, like, I had kind of a rough week this past week, so a huge chunk of that was like, I got to the end of the week and I got to the weekend and was like, I don't want to see another human being for the next 48 hours. So I just sat in my room and played My Time at Portia. So I like it a lot. I think it's 100% now in my top 3 games. It's really good. We'll talk about it. What have you been playing?
This week, or this 2 weeks, this fortnight, I have been playing some more Factory Town because I've been enjoying that.
Whoop whoop.
And I've also been trying to finish Katamari. Anyway, I've also been trying to finish Katamari because I don't think I'm actually enjoying it, but because it's such a short game, I feel like I can get myself to the end and then I can be done with it and never think about it again.
Yeah.
I think part of the problem with that game is I get motion sick playing it.
I can see that.
Especially as most of my gaming just now is on the train.
Yeah. I can't even imagine playing Katamari like while moving.
Yeah.
Ugh.
So I'm struggling with that. And also the fact that because it's like basically a port rather than a new game of the same style, and also because of just how it's designed, I'm not a huge fan of the controls.
Mm-hmm.
I get why people like it, and I think it's a really fun concept. And I'm certainly enjoying the interactions with, as you say, Space Dad. But I don't think if they bring the sequel out on Switch, I don't think I'll be buying that.
You know, you're allowed to not finish it, right?
I know. And I don't normally play games till the end if I'm not overly enjoying them. But it's not that I hate it. It's just that I'm not massively enjoying it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something about the act of finishing a game that means I can forget about it.
Yeah, I feel.
And most games are too long to do that. But the fact that this is a reasonably short game, like most of the globe is already covered, and I presume once you've done everything that's on the globe, there is no more to do.
Yeah.
Then, because it's reasonably short, I feel like I can just finish it and then I can not think about it. There's just something that niggles in my brain if I don't finish a game.
Yeah, I feel
annoying.
That.
So
I believe in you. You're going to make it through this.
Yeah. Eventually. So yeah, I've not been doing a huge amount in the last 2 weeks because, as mentioned before, my life is busy.
I feel.
Let's talk about some news, shall we? Speaking of busy.
No one's life is too busy for news. That's not true, but just roll with it. Just roll with it.
Rochelle, have you heard of Corn Warriors?
No.
Corn Warriors, apparently, and I only found out about this last week, Corn Warriors is a TV show in America.
This explains why I don't know it, because I don't have television.
And I think it's important to say it's in America, and you'll understand why. Corn Warriors is about a number of farmers competing to grow as much corn as they can.
I wish you could see my face right now.
I'm not really sure how they turn that into an exciting TV show.
No. That sounds exactly like the kind of television we should have here.
I may end up watching it. I don't know whether they show it over here anywhere. I will need to investigate that. But the reason why we're bringing this up is because the winner of the next season of Corn Warriors gets their farm in the next version of Farming Simulator.
That's so hardcore.
It is insane. Like, that would be the coolest thing ever, for like your own property to be immortalized in a video game that then people use how it's intended.
Well, I guess it's time to go start a corn farm.
Yeah, I don't think there's much more to say about that. It's quite cool. There you go.
We'll let you know who wins and what their farm looks like.
We'll talk about it.
You need
to take this one.
So, for anyone who is so excited to play My Time at Portia, but you're like, I don't want to play it on the PC. I feel you. You can play it on the Switch, and
yes,
I guess PS4 and Xbox One, I guess, if you have those ones. On April 16th.
That is so soon.
That's like a couple weeks away.
Rochelle, I've been waiting for this.
I know you have. I was waiting for it until I caved in.
You caved in, and then like 2 days later they announced it.
And I will probably also buy it on the Switch. It's that good.
It does look like the Switch version is slightly less intensive graphically. Like the grass, for example, is kind of like a flat green rather than blades of grass.
That's fine.
I'm okay with that. I don't tend to play my Switch to look at the most exciting high-def graphics.
Mm-hmm. We'll see. We'll let you know when it comes out. We'll talk about it.
We'll talk about it. Should be our new tagline. The harvest season. We'll talk about it. Great. So there are a number of other farming games that we've come across recently that we want to talk about. We're not going to spend too much time on each of them, but I just want to talk about them. Found a great list of them from one of the developers of the later games that we're going to talk about. But the first one is called Gleaner Heights. It's mostly just a kind of standard farming game. It's for PC, but it has an interesting twist in that all of the villagers have double lives, and there is a haunting past to investigate. So that sounds interesting.
It sounds interesting. It's got a very cute Stardew-esque look to it.
Yeah.
It's out now.
What's the other really interesting thing? I'll try to keep it short, but in the trailer, they show you going into like this big cavern and like it's all spooky and stuff. And I noticed, I don't know whether you watched the trailer. If you did, you might have noticed that the date is year 1, spring 1. So like they throw you into this straight away, this creepy stuff. Like first day, you are in a creepy cavern. So like I feel like it's going to be full on.
It looks so exciting. I might have to pick this up.
Maybe. It's out now.
It's out now. You can play it now.
Link in the show notes.
Yeah.
The next one is another farming game, funnily enough, called Littlewood. It comes out in May, and the interesting thing about this one is that it's set in a video game after you've defeated a dark wizard, and you have to rebuild the town. So it's got your usual kind of farming game things, farming, collecting things, there's relationships, and but you also have to help build up the town from all the destruction
I like that gimmick.
Yeah, it sounds interesting.
I've been talking a lot about games that let you impact the world around you and develop the world around you as opposed to just going through a storyline. And that sounds fun. I like the graphics on this one. It's very, very retro.
Yeah, but it's also nice. Some retro games can feel a bit icky. I don't know how to describe it. There's just something about them that the graphics doesn't feel great. Whereas how this one looks, it's really, I like how they've done it. They've kind of tried to recreate the kind of, I guess it's kind of Game Boy Advance style graphics, but it's done kind of in a modern way.
Yeah,
as well.
It's very smooth and very much lives up to modern graphics, but it also aesthetically is very Generation 2 Pokemon kind of designs. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so that looks interesting. Comes out in May on PC.
It looks real good.
Next one is Village Monsters, which is also has an interesting concept around it that I don't know whether it will go really well or whether it'll be really cheesy. But the idea is that it's set in a video game after it's been turned off, so no one else, is going to be playing it. And what do NPCs in a video games do with their lives after the video game no longer exists? So it's kind of a farming game. You do farming in it.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of hitting an interesting concept.
It looks interesting. I'm really interested to see how it comes out.
Yeah, I think it could be either really good or really cheesy.
Yeah, it's going to be one of the two. Nothing in between.
Yeah. So we'll see how that goes. That's coming in May as well, and also on the PC.
Mm-hmm. Up next is the very, very exciting game Atomic Crops, which
is possibly our first actual, this is a brand new announced game since we started the podcast.
Yeah, it's a new game coming up. We don't have a release date yet, but it'll be on PC and console, is the official phrasing. And it's a farming game that takes place after a nuclear war. So you go to a farm and then a bomb explodes and then you're dealing with crazy mutated crops and shooting enemies, and it looks intense.
It does. It's not, if you're looking for a game that is, calm, Stardew Valley-esque, I'm just going to go around and farm. No, this is not for you.
No. I will say, though, they have an amazing trailer.
The trailer is the best thing about it. Like, I watched that trailer and I was like, this is amazing. Oh, yeah, go watch the trailer. The trailer is fantastic. So good.
I love the guy at the top. I'm like, I feel this so much because he's just like, I have a new farm. This is the greatest thing ever. Look, a cow house, a corn bush. Like, I'm like, oh, bro, same. So like.
Yeah, no, great trailer.
I think this looks really interesting and fun. I don't think Al thinks it looks as fun.
No, I think it looks interesting, and I can definitely see why some people would like it. But to me, it takes away everything that I like about farming games and just stresses me out instead. Because I watch some of the gameplay and it just seems to be someone running around constantly shooting things that are trying to get your crops. And it seems like you spent more time rebuilding the crops than replanting crops and stuff than anything else. And so I feel like I don't think I get it. Mm-hmm. It's an interesting concept. And actually, I think I would like it if it were the real-time battling aspect of it.
Not every game has to be for everyone.
No, and if this looks like your thing, more power to you.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it.
We'll talk about it later. We'll talk about it.
Another one is Chuck and Bull, which is, they describe themselves as a large-scale farming simulator. So it's kind of a cross between what you would kind of consider as farming games and the kind of real life farming simulators, in that it's trying to be more real life, but it's still got the kind of graphics of a Stardew Valley type game, but you've got tractors and different machines to plow and sow, and harvest. So it's more industrial scale, but it's not like Farming Simulator, for example, where it's trying as real life as possible.
It's like if Farming Simulator and Harvest Moon had a child. More like Farming Simulator and Stardew Valley.
Anyway, I don't think the specific parent matters. But
I mean, mostly just aesthetically.
It looks interesting. I like the idea of having tractors and stuff like that. I will probably look into this, but it's got no release date yet. So it's something to keep an eye on.
I'm excited to play this game. I'm excited for this one. I think it looks really fun. Yeah. I want to drive around a tractor. Yeah. On the website, there's this really sad little gif of like driving a tractor over another farmer's pumpkins, and it crushes them all. And then the farmer's like, "My pumpkins." Yeah,
it's so sad.
Anyway, yeah, I like that one. It looks good. Chuck and Bull.
And finally, I'm really excited about this one. And I'm getting more and more excited about this one the more I look at it. This game is called Snacko. Sadly, it has no release date, and it looks like they're kind of working on it part-time just now, but they are looking to get kind of funding to go full-time. But this looks like such a lovely game. So it is a farming simulator. Its graphics are kind of Paper Mario-esque. So your character looks like a kind of 2D paper character walking around this 3D world, and you're farming. But it's set on an island, an old abandoned island that you're trying to revive, and so it kind of has some Animal Crossing aspects where you're kind of inviting other people to come and live on the island that you're trying to regenerate and stuff. And so similar to what you were talking about earlier, Rochelle, about and affecting the world around you and not just your farm. It's about regenerating this island. It looks quite fun.
Oh my gosh, I literally had not seen this
Doesn't
it
look so nice?
I love this. Oh my gosh. You're a tiny little cat person. I love this so much. I'm so excited.
It's really sad. The thing I'm most excited about is the fact that you have one tool that does everything. Apart from a watering can, you just have one tool that it clears things on the ground. It hoes and it mines and stuff like that. I know it seems silly, but I really don't like having all those different tools. It annoys me. I mean, I think it adds an interesting aspect in some ways, but also I like the idea of a game just not having that.
You know what game doesn't have a lot of tools? My Time at Portia.
Well, the answer to that is no, I don't actually, because I've not played it yet.
Yeah, it's got like you have a pickaxe and an axe, and then like a weapon to fight monsters with, and that's about it.
That sounds exciting.
Yeah, but today we're not talking about My Time at Portia.
No, we're not.
We're talking about Story of Seasons, Trio of Towns. Woo!
And it only took us half an hour to get to this point.
That's how we do.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. It's how we do. So today begins our deep dive into Trio of Towns.
And when Rochelle says deep dive, she means it.
We're going to do a deep dive. So how this is going to work is we've broken it up into different facets of the game in different episodes. So like today, we're going to talk about the story and the characters, which is going to take a while because there's a lot of characters.
There are.
And then in our next episode, we'll talk about the mechanics. And then later on, we'll talk about like the calendar and the festivals and stuff. It's going to be a lot. We're going to do a real deep dive.
We can do this.
We can do this.
Yeah.
So for today's episode, since we're talking about story and characters, I'm just going to start at the top here and say, spoiler alert, we're going to talk about things.
And like a lot of spoilers, like some serious fundamental spoilers. They won't ruin the game for you if you're not doing it for the underlying story, but very, very quickly on, we will be spoiling the entire plot.
We'll be spoiling the plot. We'll be talking about different characters' individual plots. If you don't want that, don't listen. My suggestion is spoilers are great and you should listen anyway. But you do you.
Yeah, I did actually know some spoilers before properly playing this game.
I love
we can come back to
spoilers.
that later.
Just so you know, I'm in camp accept the spoilers. I know people freak out and they're like, "Oh, but it'll ruin the whole thing." I'm like, I have never once had something spoiled and felt like it ruined my experience of the thing.
Yeah, I think it depends on what it is. So some things, and you could argue that this makes them flawed, but some things rely on a specific twist or something to make them actually interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think the argument that makes them less good is it's a valid point, but I can also understand why people
still
enjoy them.
There's a lot of joy in experiencing something for the first time, going in blind. I guess the way I kind of see it is like there are times when not knowing the twist ahead of time makes it have a larger impact. Like The Sixth Sense is a lot more fun if you don't realize he's dead. Spoiler, he's dead the whole time. He is the ghost.
Yeah, the funny thing is, right, I have never seen that film. I know nothing about what the film actually is about, but I know the twist.
Yeah, well, it was kind of like the seminal example of that kind of like big movie twist. Very much in the way of like how like The Matrix seems cheesy now because everything from it has become such a trope. Like, the twist in The Sixth Sense seems cheesy and obvious now, but when it was first done, it really kind of was a newer thing. But, like, my perspective is like, yeah, you experience the twist differently, but also, if it's a good movie or game or whatever, knowing the twist, you should also be able to find good things and enjoyment out of things outside of the twist. And like, if it's a good piece of media, there's going to be a lot to enjoy that is not dependent entirely upon one specific piece of information. It's a good way to tell if something has depth. Does it rely specifically on surprising you, or does it have more to it than that?
Yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I think that actually Trio Towns is a perfect example of that, where there is a twist, but it's not hugely important. It does add some depth to the characters, but knowing that ahead of time doesn't change that.
I like it. So, spoiler alert. If you're still with us now, that means you're going to accept hearing the spoilers. Sorry, not sorry for spoiling The Sixth Sense for you.
Let's be honest. If you hadn't known the twist for Sixth Sense and you're still planning on seeing it, it's probably a bit late now anyway. I'd be surprised if anybody doesn't know the twist.
But you should see that movie sometime. It's a good movie.
Okay.
It's about a therapist for a little kid, and the kid is like, I'm scared because I see dead people. And the therapist is trying to help him, and then in the end you figure out that the therapist is one of the dead people that the kid sees.
Whoa.
So it's great. It's a good movie.
Interesting.
It's still worth watching, even if you know the twist.
Wait, so why was he seeing a therapist if the therapist was dead? Like, do the parents know that he's seeing a therapist?
The thing is that the kid sees dead people. That's where that line comes from. Like,
I get that bit, but like, is he going to a therapist's office?
This is kind of like my example of what I'm saying, because like the thing about this movie is what makes it good isn't knowing the twist. What makes it good is how it frames the story itself so that you can be unaware of the twist, if that makes sense. So like the entire movie you're like seeing the therapist, like this is a shot of the therapist in a room with the kid's mom, and the way it's shot you think, oh, he was just talking to her and gave her some bad news. But at the end, like once you realize, oh, he was a ghost in the whole time, you're like, he wasn't actually talking to the mom. He's just a ghost. But the way it's framed, you can't really tell.
Kind of. I think I probably need to watch it because
You need to watch it. It's a very visual thing. Anyway, this has been Movie Corner with Rochelle.
Movie Spoilers Corner.
Movie spoilers are great.
Tune in next time to hear another spoiler for another film.
Who knows what I'll spoil next? So, let's talk about trio of towns.
Yes.
So, like we kind of said in our brief overview, episode before last, I'm pretty sure. It's been a while.
It was the episode before last.
This game is about you becoming a farmer and interacting with a trio of towns full of characters. So, let's start with you and your family, and we'll kind of cover the story, and then we'll go into a breakdown of all the characters of this game.
Sounds good.
All right. So first and foremost, we have you, the player character. There's a lot of customization in this game. Visually, you can customize your appearance. Just so you know, you can have different skin tones, but no matter what skin tone you are, your family's always white, and your icon will always be white. It's very strange.
It's almost like it was tagged on at the end as like, oh, we need some diversity.
Yeah, but I also this is really common in video games. I think Pokemon does this too. The last time I had this conversation was about Pokemon, where you can pick whatever skin. Let's Go is a really great example. You can pick whatever skin tone you want. Your mom is kind of vaguely ethnically ambiguous, and then everyone else in the game is white. That's not true. They're Japanese. It's in Japan. Sorry. Might be. White is not the default. But you know what I mean? There's no diversity in skin tone. And I feel like it's not that hard in game. I don't actually know. I don't make games. I don't program things. But I feel like you should be able to make it so that just you pick your skin tone and it just changes your family's skin tone to that, you know?
Well, I mean, you don't make video games, but think about it. Of course, that can be done because if you think about, shiny Pokemon, that's the exact same thing. It's just occasionally the palette is changed.
Yeah, I feel like that should be easy, at least for icons and stuff. I do suppose that you would have to, in a lot of these games, when you talk to people, they have little animation arts, and you'd have to make a set of those for every skin tone. But I feel like that's not that hard, It's
not.
But anyway, I mentioned that because it just feels strange to me, the idea of for example, if you're black and you're I can play a black character. Was I just randomly adopted by this very Aryan white family? So that's my notes there. You do have a set of personality traits you can pick for yourself. This is mostly relevant in different traits give you different bonuses towards doing different things in the game. So for example, if you choose the animal lover personality, your animals love you more from the start because you get along with animals. Or if you choose Tycoon, you start with 50,000 G being the money, instead of 4,000 G, so you just start with lots of money.
How did I not know that? That feels
well,
like cheating.
If you think that feels like cheating, there are 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 different personality types you can start out with when you first get the game, but you can unlock an extra 2 if in your first save file you essentially finish the story. You have to see the end credits and raise all the towns' rankings to rank A and see the credits again. And then you unlock these other 2 personality types. And one is layabout or weakling, depending on the translation. And it's essentially super hard mode. So you start with barely any stamina and stuff like that. And you have a capped stamina maximum that's lower than usual. Or you could choose Miracle Worker, which is essentially super easy mode because you can transfer to your new save file certain select portions of your old save file. So you keep all your money, you keep all your recipes, you keep all your clothes, you keep all your trophies. Let me tell you, this game is really super easy when you start out with 15 million money.
I can see that being reasonably easy. Yeah.
Yeah. No, trust me, I've done it before. You can literally just buy your way through the entire storyline, and I literally I was doing it, and I don't know who I said this comment to. It might have been you, but I was just is this what it's like being rich? Where you can just buy other people's affection and buy anything you need anytime without consideration or consequence? Like, it's a very strange experience.
Yeah, so. It does feel a little bit like that feature is a political statement.
Yeah. I'm sure it wasn't intended to be, but that's how I feel like it is.
We can make it like that.
Yes. So that's you. And you have a little family. You actually get, unlike in a lot of other farming games where it's like, you have a dead grandpa. In this game, you have a legit family. So your family consists of, so you have your dad, Daryl, and your mom, who is Marlena, I think. I'm going to choose to believe that's how you say that name. And then you have a little sister named Lynn. They are very white.
Yeah.
Blonde hair, blue-eyed, kind of white. I don't know. Daryl and your little sister have kind of like more like red hair. Anyway, that's not relevant. So your story begins with your dad, who is a fancy businessman with a fancy tie. And he is like, so we're going to move because I got a new job and we have to move for my job. And you're like, I don't really want to move. What if I become a farmer, Dad? And your dad is like, no, you cannot do that. And then you literally have a fight all night about it. And then on the other end, your dad is like, okay, I'm going to send you to your Uncle Frank, who is an actual farmer, and he's going to put you through the ringer, and he's going to decide whether or not you have what it takes to be a farmer, and I'll leave it up to him. If you don't, you come back, and if you do, you can farm.
And like this argument you have with your dad, it's real intense.
Yeah, like there's like literally yelling and stuff. And at the end, they're like, and then they fought about it all night long. And I'm just like, whoa.
Yeah, not backing down.
This is some serious stuff. I did skip the entire beginning of the story, my B. Because the game actually starts out with like a memory of you as a kid, and your mom took you to like a petting farm where you pet a cow and, I don't know, pick some strawberries, I think. And that's why you wanted to become a farmer, because you liked it so much. So you're very young.
Specifically, I think the cow, wasn't it, that you really liked?
Yeah, because the cow, like, you start out in your memory, you're like, I'm scared of the cow. And your mom's like, it's okay, you can pet it, see? And you're like, oh my gosh, this is great. It's really cute.
It's Rochelle.
It's me.
Loving the cows.
Yeah, so you go to your Uncle Frank, and I think we mentioned this last time, but going through your Uncle Frank's tests to see if you're good enough to be a farmer is essentially the tutorial of the game. So you eventually get through it, and you eventually get your farm. And then the way the story progresses from there is sort of twofold. And these two different tracks often intertwine and mix together, but there's two distinctly different tracks to it. The first is the farming tips. So even though Frank says that you're okay to be a farmer, your dad isn't quite convinced that you really have what it takes to be a farmer, even though Frank says you do. So he repeatedly sends you these sets of farming tips, which are essentially, you have to do this to prove your worth to me.
Yeah, tips doesn't really feel like the right word.
Yeah. It's more like challenges, tasks, a to-do list.
Exactly.
And there's 3 sets of them, and they have their own kind of storyline that you go through. A lot of them include like, okay, I'm trying to talk about too many things at once again. It's how I do. So the other track is your relationship with the towns themselves. So the way this works is that you have rankings where just in normal gameplay and doing things like talking to villagers and buying stuff from their shops and stuff like that, you raise your relationship with that particular town. And then at each ranking, once you hit the maximum point of that rank, to get up to the next rank, you have to finish certain tasks, which usually involves like building something for the town in terms of infrastructure, or doing a favor or helping out a particular villager, something like that. And raising your relationship with the town. I think it goes EDCBAS, right?
Yeah, yes.
In your rankings, with S being the highest ranking, meaning you've maxed everything out. And so, like, as you do your farming tips, some of your farming tips rely on how high your relationship with all the towns is. So, like, one farming tip may be, like, raise your town ranks to C for all the towns or something like that. And do we want to talk about the end of the farming tips plot line, which is sort of like the main storyline of the game?
I think we do. This is the bit that I spoiled before I played the game, but it doesn't ruin anything. And if you really want to do it, then like I'll stick a time in the show notes to skip to after the spoiler.
This is it. This is your spoiler warning. The last one. So part of the farming tips is you get a mysterious rival for competitions. So like when you have competitions for who has the best crop or who has the best animal, you have a mysterious rival appear who is decked in an entire suit of armor named Mr. D. And one of your last farming tip challenges is to defeat Mr. D in a competition, which is pretty hard. Like, he's very good at what he does. But when you defeat Mr. D, you find out who he is, and it turns out it's your dad.
What?
It's Mr. Daryl. And then you find out that like the reason he was so insistent on you not becoming a farmer is because he used to be a farmer, but he couldn't quite keep up with it and ended up taking a different job. And so he's like very sure that you will also fail, which is not a good reason to crush your dreams, Dad.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not. But also it's, I think, understandable in that he doesn't want you to end with the same, disappointment and have to feel like you need to change course.
Yeah.
Which, obviously that doesn't make it right, but it certainly makes it understandable, and I think it kind of underscores that character, and you kind of understand their reasoning behind everything they've done up to this point.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I think it's a really nice little ending, sort of, to the storyline. They never explicitly say it, but I'm pretty convinced that the farm you take over that was left abandoned was your dad's farm.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear.
Yeah. So that's like that main storyline. I could go through the specific tasks if you want, but I don't think that's necessary.
No, I don't. I think the important thing is there's lots of different tasks, and they involve crops and animals and the town ranks and all that sort of thing. The exact specifics isn't massively important. Mm-hmm. They do get. I think is important to note that they get quite a lot harder as they go through. So, like the first set of farming tips is reasonably easy. You can get that done pretty quickly. The second set is moderately hard. It's like, it's not just, a little bit harder. It's quite a lot harder and, takes quite a lot more time. And the third one for me was like long-term goals. Like
yes.
you don't get that done in a week,
Yeah, no, it gets exponentially harder there are only 3 sets, but they both get harder and there's more tasks to accomplish.
Yeah.
So like the first one is 3 relatively simple tasks, but like the third set is like 6 relatively hard tasks.
And like, I think the tasks themselves are done in such a way so that it is late game stuff. Like you can't really, like you can speed run it, but you can't, you're essentially speedrunning to the end, like late game stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like, oh, if I focus on, it's quite well rounded as well. So you don't just like, if I focus on just growing plants, you won't get them all done.
Mm-hmm. It really, really kind of forces you to interact with almost every different aspect of the game. There's challenges of, you have to do crops, you have to do animals, you have to upgrade your house, you have to increase your town ranks, you have to build. There's essentially a set of like making stuff machines. Like there's a cheese maker and
this feels a bit like straying into mechanics too much. Yeah,
exactly. But it also like, I'm not going to go into that, but it like also encourages you to do those kinds of things. So like it does a pretty good job of saying, we're going to make sure you experience the entirety of this game within the main storyline.
Yeah, I agree. It works quite well.
Mm-hmm. The other main storyline is upgrading your town ranks, which has to do with your relationship with the town and getting to know the townspeople and developing the towns themselves, which culminates in, once you get everything to rank A, all the towns people come together and have a big celebration and say, "You're so wonderful, you helped us out so much." And then the credits roll. So those are the 2 like main overarching storylines of the game.
Yeah, it's interesting. I never really personally considered, until you talked about it then, the town ranks as any sort of storyline. As more, you know, I considered them previously as just kind of things to do. But I guess, yeah, with your kind of, there is quite a lot. You learn a lot about the people in the towns through them anyway. Mm-hmm. You know, when you have to help build the bridge or whatever, and then afterwards you've got your cutscene of them thanking you, and then the later on ones are quite interesting as well, where they kind of, you learn more about the town and why certain things are the way they are, and stuff like that.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I definitely feel like it's story, and I definitely think it adds a lot of personality both to the towns and to the characters. Because, like, for example, like, it's not just like, oh, accomplish this task and build this bridge and then we'll be done with it. Building the bridge being an example of, it's one of the first town rank tasks you do. It's a low-level West Town challenge, essentially, where there's just this creaky old bridge, and it's not just like, this bridge needs to be replaced, so bring us some wood to replace it. It's like, we're actually worried about the safety of our villagers because someone's going to fall through this bridge, so can you help us out? And then everybody, literally, most of the characters of the town, if not all of them, come together and say, thanks for supplying the supplies, and now everybody pitch in and do this. And then you all work together to build the bridge, and you get a nice, shiny new bridge, including in the overworld, so, like, you can actually see what you've done on a daily basis. But then also, the villagers will talk about it occasionally afterwards, being like, oh, I'm so glad we got that bridge fixed. Like, it's an actual part of the town and the life within it. And I think that's really neat, and that's really nice, so.
Yeah, I like that as well. The kind of permanent changing of the town is quite a nice thing that I hadn't really seen before. And one thing I do find funny is, like, all of these things, they come to you and they say, look, we've got, I think there's actually one where they ask for money, but most of them, I think it's like, we have raised the money, we need you to get some supplies, which I find quite funny, because if you're providing the supplies and then all the townsfolk are doing the actual work, what's the money for?
I don't know. I would like to think that it's for, like, supplies that you can't supply, like
Yeah.
You may be able to supply wood for the bridge, but you can't really supply rope for the bridge, maybe. But I actually don't know.
Yeah.
Because there are, like, each town has a set of, like, there are ones that you need just straight money for, but those are usually for things that it's not really something you can supply. You know what I mean? It's like, let's polish up the town bull statue or stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
And then, like, some of the tasks are definitely, like, story-oriented in the sense of, like, so you have the main, like, overarching story of the towns, but then each character also has their own little individual storyline that you learn as you get to know them. And some of the town ones kind of, like, focus on, like, that character story of saying, like, oh, well, for example, Yuzuki, who is a villager in Tsuyakusa, is he makes jewelry. And so, like, one of your town rank things is, like, help him make a piece for a huge commission from another town or something like that. And in doing that, you get to know his character better, but you're also developing your relationship with the town in general at the same time. So, like, the entirety of the town rank thing feels very, very steeped in story to me. It's about the individual characters, or it's about their sort of communal identity as members of their respective towns, etc.
Yeah, definitely.
This episode is going to be a lot of me ranting.
That's okay.
Speaking of individual characters, do we want to talk about individual characters? If you want to say something or cover something, please just tell me.
Oh, don't worry, I will. I have thoughts, and I'm putting my thoughts out there when they come. But obviously, you have played this game a lot more than me, so you have a lot more thoughts than me.
So many hours clocked in this game.
I don't even want, like, if you've done 55 hours in the game that I'm not going to mention in the last week, you know, I don't even want to question how many hours you have in Trio of Towns.
Video gaming is my hobby.
Is it just a hobby at this point, or is it more like a second job that you don't get paid for?
Is that not what a hobby is? Maybe someday I'll get paid for my hobby.
That'd be great.
Yeah. So we're just going to go through this by town. So just as a little bit of a breakdown, there is a consistent sort of structure to each town that every town follows and just has different characters plugged into it. So each town has, like, a leader or an elder kind of a person. I really mostly want to say leader because one of them is not an old person as you would think of when you say the word elder. But it has a leader, and it has an essentially, like, a guardian spirit character of each town, who is akin to, like, the harvest goddess in, like, previous Harvest Moon games. And then you have marriage candidates, and then you have the other villagers, just generic villagers, which usually, like, fit into particular types of roles. So, like, each town has one or two farming families. Each town has characters who run a cafe. There's also a bunch of wild animals you can befriend, but I'm not going to talk about them as characters. I just wanted to mention that, and I think that's fun.
Yeah, I think their depth is certainly a lot less than your human characters.
Yeah. Did you know if you befriend the animals, like, they'll come and give you things and be your friends?
I did not know that.
They have, like, their own little cutscene, but that's about it. Like, that, there's nothing more I can tell you.
How much effort do you have to put in for that, though?
Quite a bit.
Yeah. See, I feel like it's probably too much for me to want to bother.
Yeah, it's something you really have to... It takes a lot of work. Even if you do it very casually, where essentially you just occasionally pick up an animal and put it down, and eventually they get used to you doing that. Like, I do that level of friendship with animals very frequently, and, like, still not very good friends with a whole bunch of animals, even in my game where I'm at, like, year 4 or 5. So...
Fair enough.
If you don't actively focus on it, it gets real long and hard.
Yeah, I only ever really pick up the animals because they look incredibly cute when you've picked up a fennec fox and walking around with it.
It's so cute. You can also like show different animals to different villagers and they'll make commentary on it. And if they like it more, you'll get more like friend points with that villager and stuff.
You just spend so much time in these games just trying things out to see whether it does anything or not. Like, I would never consider picking up one of the wild animals and showing it to a villager. I don't know why that would never cross my mind, but it just doesn't.
Animals are great. There's a lot of depth to these kinds of games. Like, there's just a lot of little tiny mechanics that you would never think of. But this is not the mechanics episode. This is the characters episode. So let's talk about characters. You want to just go in the order of how you unlock towns?
Yeah, that sounds good. Because I think that's important because they're in that order for a reason, and I think it's quite interesting when you unlock a new town and there are new villagers. But we can, I guess that's more mechanics as well, but...
We'll go through it.
Yeah.
So, West Town is Wild West themed. American Wild West themed.
You
I don't know if
what
other
everyone
countries have
outside
Wild
of
West.
America looks at as America as. Yeah, this is our view of America.
I'm going to trust you. I don't know.
No, that's nonsense. It's a view.
I don't know.
I think it's a view that we would have of specific parts of America.
Yeah.
But yeah,
The Wild
West is very specifically American.
Yes. So, in this town, I have this list in a very weird order. I could put it in the order that I originally mentioned it in, but I didn't because I'm bad at this. Parallel structure, Rochelle. Okay, so we're not going to do parallel structure because I don't want to dig through this list.
Let's just go through the list.
So here's how I have these lined up. We have marriage candidates, then the town guardian, and then villagers. So in our first town, you have 3 marriage candidate options. You have a woman named Lisette. Lisette. She is like the sweet girly girl kind of a character. She runs a shop called 1,000 Bouquets, where she sells bouquets and perfume and flowers and flower seeds. She's the flower girl.
She's an interesting combination of a really bad stereotype, but also you can't help but like her.
This is what we call a positive stereotype, which is still a stereotype, but people think it's less awful because it's not negative. She's very much like the girly girl stereotype of like, oh, I just want to get married and be into flowers and all those things. Part of her storyline is her wanting to upgrade her shop. So like you help her develop bouquets, you help her develop perfume and stuff like that. I will say it's not really played this way, but I just want to shout out Lisette for being an independent business owner. There's a lot of women business owners in this game. They don't focus on that, but I like that.
I don't know how she manages to make so much money in a place where nobody seems to have flowers, or let me rephrase that, a place where there are so many people who grow their own flowers.
Right? Because flowers are like just general crops. And like the thing about crops is that like you can actually in the overworld see different farmers growing their different crops. And you're just like, they can just grow their own flowers. But
who's buying these flowers from her?
She's got a successful business. Like part of this game is you can do part-time jobs, and a very frequent part-time job is she's just like, someone ordered flowers for this person, go give them this bouquet. You're just like, what an amazing businesswoman. Anyway, our next candidate option is Wayne, who is the ladies' man.
The next stereotype.
He is the postman, not just for West Town, but for all of the towns. There's only one post office in the entire region, I guess. And he works at the post office, which is called Postio. Wayne is actually a surprise favorite of mine. I did not expect to like him at all. but I actually ended up liking him enough to marry him once in a save file. He's got this kind of like, oh, I'm a ladies' man. I was taught to treat women with respect, which I guess means just like kind of, sort of, but not quite crossing the line into flirty. I don't know.
Yeah, I certainly have, mixed feelings about Wayne. He, certainly with the way that you're kind of introduced to him is, oh, that's Wayne. They all love him. And
he literally has groupie fangirls.
Yeah, it's really weird. I think they do a good job of kind of humanizing him as well, though. So it's not like he's not trying to kind of egg that on. I don't think.
Yeah, and like if you actually like pursue him as a romance option, he literally has a point where he's like, I want it to be clear to everybody, I'm not flirting with any of you, I'm not dating any of you, I have a girlfriend. Like, he actually draws a hard line, and that's kind of like a nice story touch, where you see this difference between like, oh, he's just trying to be nice and polite. I think to me it comes across as a little weird because it feels like a gender reversal of something that I think a lot of women experience, where for a lot of women, it's just kind of like this default mode to like be kind and polite to men in general, like smile at them, like laugh at their jokes so that they don't attack you. You know what I mean? Like, it's definitely a defense mechanism of I have to do this for my own safety. And men very often interpret that as you're flirting with me and you're into me, which is like an actual phenomenon that women go through all the time. And it feels strange to me to essentially have a role reversal of that, where it's like, his story and character is about, I was taught to be kind and nice and polite to people, and they just misinterpreted that as flirting. Like, it's not bad, it's just very strange to me,
Yeah.
Something about it doesn't settle quite right with me. But I do like him. He's a surprise fave. I was not expecting to like him. I like him a lot. So,
cool.
You know who I don't like? Ford.
I think we're going to be very agreed on this one.
So, Ford is the
next stereotype in the list.
Yeah. Ford is the cold, hard doctor scientist type character. He is a fan favorite. I've noticed this, like, people love Ford. Like, and I don't. So the thing about Ford is that his storyline is very much like the I'm cold and heartless and you must teach me to love kind of a storyline, you know what I mean? Which I really hate. If that's your thing, all the more power to you. But part of it is that I don't like it because it kind of encourages like almost like this idea that like if you're in an abusive relationship where your partner is constantly putting you down and being rude to you and not really showing you affection, that if you just try hard enough, if you just keep trying, eventually they'll admit that they actually truly love you and everything will be okay.
Yeah, it does this kind of, it gets to the aspect of some people just want to be able to change someone.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to say people don't change, but generally, if your basis for a relationship is that you can change them, it's probably not going to go well.
It's not.
Because
it's
either...
never... Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, because either they aren't going to change, which is the more likely option, or they do change and then you suddenly lose your entire purpose for the relationship existing.
Exactly. It's so unhealthy to base your entire relationship on changing somebody.
Yeah. But then equally, I think also people like character progression, and in a way it kind of feels cheating, but also it is a really easy way to get a character progressing.
Yeah. Like as a player, the feedback is you are making progress and doing good.
Exactly.
It's just that has a very uncomfortable social implication, A huge part, a lot of people don't talk about this in particular when they talk about romancing Ford, but like in particular, like especially with like his comments just in the everyday or like after competitions, is a lot of them are very, very put downy on the player of saying like, oh, you're not great. You're bad at this. You should do better. You're a failure. And I hate that. I do not find people putting me down to be attractive. But he's a fan favorite. People are really, really into him. I don't see it, but to each their own. I'm not here to judge.
And hey, if you're a listener and you really like Ford, write in. Tell us why.
Explain the appeal of Ford to me. I truly do not understand, but I am open to understanding. I guess I'll listen to different perspectives or whatever. So those are the 3 marriage candidates for the town. You'll notice that they're not gender balanced. That's okay. It balances out in the end. Stick with us. So next on our list, we have the sort of garden spirit. We have the guardian spirit of the town. In previous Harvest Moon games, you have like the harvest goddess, who is a very, very, very common recurring character. This is essentially that, but each town has their own character in particular. So West Town has Desi?
I would say Desi.
Desi like Bessie. Okay, perfect. Desi, who is, all of the guardians are very childlike in these games. In terms of lore, Desi is specifically like the younger sister of capital T, the harvest goddess of previous games. Like the harvest goddess is a particular character, and this is her little sister. She's kind of like cute and clumsy and very sweet. She has a really pretty design, which I know looks aren't everything, but I like to talk about game design. She's very cute. And she
just wants to help.
She's very into helping. She's a very sweet, very like, there's a particular word I'm looking for. I can't think of it.
I mean, one of the things to kind of highlight that part of her personality is, I think when we were talking about the bridge, and the fact that it's, people are worried about the bridge falling down. I'm pretty sure she says that she's been kind of using her powers to stop it falling down. Mm-hmm. Which is kind of like, I'm glad that she's the one in this town, because I don't think either of the other two would have spent so much time stopping the bridge falling down.
No, for sure. She's very self-sacrificing and very oriented towards trying to help others. She's a very sweet little character. So other than that, we have our general villagers. So we have, of course, your Uncle Frank, who is one of the local farmers. He lives his own little farming life. He's quite content to live his own little farming life. He plays a banjo and writes music and cooks and farms.
And he gets shipped in game.
Oh yeah, we'll get there.
Oh, have you got that for later?
I literally have it in the notes. And then the other farming family we have is Megan, who is essentially like the town leader, and her adult son, Hector, and his son, who is a child, Colin. Like I said, Megan's essentially like the town leader. So she's like the mayor of West Town, essentially. And then Hector has this sort of story. He's like the gentle giant kind of character, where like he's very quiet and very big and very sweet. His entire storyline is like his wife is dead, as per the trope that is referencing, where there is a dead woman to support the storyline of another man, usually the wife. But his wife died, and his whole thing is like he's trying to be mom and dad for his son. And so he does a lot of things that he's been made fun of for. He's like he does a lot of baking, and he does a lot of sewing and fixing up Colin's clothes, and he gets made fun of it because it's like, that's not manly enough. And he's like,
I forgot about that bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, but I still want to do it because I love my child. Like, I like him a lot. He's a sweet character.
But he hides that from Colin as well.
He does, which is
sad.
His flaw. Which is sad, but also like that's kind of realistic for a culture that idealizes toxic masculinity, you know? Like
yeah.
So like that that feels realistic to me to say, like, this is normal and okay, but also everyone around you is telling you to be ashamed of it, so hide it. But he's a good guy. He's a good guy, TM. Then we also have another family who is Miranda and Noel, another single parent with a child. Miranda runs the general store called Straw Market, and her daughter is Noelle.
Who has, I think Noelle has no real filter on what she says.
No, she is definitely one of those kids who will say anything at any time for any reason.
You need to be careful what you say around her. That's for sure.
And Miranda, 100% canonically has a crush on Frank. 100%.
It's so awkward, though, because is there not a moment where someone makes out that, you think that Frank has a girlfriend or something?
Okay. Here's how this cutscene goes. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. You probably remember much better than me. It's been a while.
I remember it very distinctly because I have problems with it. So you and Wayne are just walking through the town, and you walk by Frank's house, and you hear him say, "I love you." And the way they make it, you don't have choices in the cutscenes, you just see it. And so they go, your character assumes that Frank is confessing his love to someone, and immediately goes and tells the whole town.
Oh, yeah.
And I hate that.
So
I
bad.
really, really hate that. But what it is that you go talk to all the ladies of the town, and two of them are like, "Oh, this is great. Let's gossip about it." And Miranda is clearly upset. And you go through the entire cutscene, you find out he was actually just writing a song on his banjo, as he is wont to do. He hasn't confessed his love to anybody. And everyone's like, "Oh, really embarrassed. Like, I'm sorry, we way jumped to conclusions. That was wrong." But Miranda is like, "Yeah, you guys were dumb. This is great. This is how it's supposed to be." Because she's clearly invested in him not liking anybody else, because she likes him, which another character actually picks up on. But she denies it. But then also, like, Frank at the end, like, you walk him home and you apologize. You're like, "Sorry, I messed up, but hey, maybe someday." And he's like, "I've kind of given up on getting married. I kind of just like living by myself and being a farmer." So it's weird.
Yeah, it's really awkward. And I remember now that you've reminded me, I do remember watching that cutscene going, "No, what am I doing? What am I doing?
Right?
I don't. This is only going to go badly."
I'm like, I would never do that.
No.
Why are you making me do this?
I guess that does kind of go into one of those issues with these games where you're essentially transplanted into another body, but you can't 100% decide everything they do. And there are always some things that you're like, "No, I wouldn't do that."
Yeah. So that's Miranda, single mom, running a shop, crazy daughter Noelle, who is friends with Colin, as you would expect. And then our last family of the town is Brad and Carrie and Marco. So Marco is Brad's grandfather, and Brad and Carrie are married.
Yeah.
Much to my dismay.
Yeah.
I
can't, we keep having this where we always end up with like the same in-game relationships, or attempted relationships in this case, and it's really weird.
I always, in every single game, there is at least one character who I totally crush on, but is already married, so I can't marry them.
And this one was so disappointing because, like, the way that she's first presented to you, that I certainly just assumed, she was a marriage candidate, because
she is presented like a marriage candidate.
She really is, and then you find out that she's married, and you're like, oh.
Like, I'm so disappointed.
That changes everything, I guess.
I wish I could marry Carrie. Oh well, it is what it is. So
I'm sure there's a mod for that.
I'm sure there is. Okay. Anyway, before I go off on that tangent,
yeah, that's we'll talk about it.
Brad, Carrie, and Marco live above and run the Garden Grill, which is the town's cafe, essentially. So Brad is the chef character. He's very dramatic. And then Carrie is his wife. She's very sweet and peppy and cannot cook. There's an entire cutscene of just like, she wants to try some recipes. Escape while you can, but you can't escape. And then she makes some recipes and everyone gets sick and has to go to the clinic. And then Marco is like the old man who likes to fish kind of a character. That's what he do. He fish. That's it.
Yep.
And that's the main cast of Westtown. Shall we move on to Lulu Coco?
Yeah, I guess one thing that I want to say is that when I came, you start off the game and these are the only characters that you have, although obviously Desi's not there right at the beginning. But these are all the characters you know of, and if you don't already know everything, you're kind of, obviously there's kind of a hint that possibly there might be more than just Westtown, but I certainly wasn't thinking about the fact that there would be more characters later. And the immediate thing I do, one of my first things is I go and meet everyone and like scope out the marriage candidates, because that's an important thing to me in these games. And so I kind of did this odd thing where you start kind of working yourself up to decide who you're going to go for, and then along comes the second town and changes everything.
Surprise!
It was such an odd moment.
100%. I had that exact same experience. So they really throw it at you. I was going to say out of nowhere, but it's not out of nowhere. It's specifically on Spring 15, where they're like, hey, there's another town. You want to come hang out?
What are the chances? This there's suddenly another place you can walk down, and we just so happened to rebuild it. I wonder what was happening in Lulu Coco when the path was broken. Like, were they just completely cut off from everything else?
I don't know, because here's the thing. So like the towns are broken. Towns have two sections, essentially, when it comes to the breakdown of the map. So you can either enter through the south of the town, which you have to do from the crossroads between all the towns and your farm. But then the north sections of the towns are all connected. You can go from town to town to town through the north sections.
But those paths only exist once you've experienced the town, right? And I actually went back to check. In Westtown, where there's a tunnel to get to Tsuyukusa, before you unlock that, there is just a rock face.
Yeah, it's the same in all the other towns, and it's like,
so odd.
This is really weird. It's one of those things that, like, mechanically it makes sense, but then it has very strange story implications of like, what happened? Why did you just put up stone walls between your towns just because your gates were broken down so you couldn't go through them on the south end?
Why is nobody talking about this?
No one talks about it. It's so... Anyway, it's weird.
Yeah.
So your second town that unlocks is Lulu Coco. And again, we have 3 marriage candidates here. First, we have your guy candidate, who is Ludus. He's the, like, big brother kind of character, where he's always like doing everything, jack of all trades, helping people out, being a big brother kind of character. He runs a shop called watch this. Relacian? Relacian?
I was wondering whether it's meant to be Relaxian.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know. But that's...
I don't know, but that would make sense.
It makes more sense than anything else I've thought up.
Yeah, Relaxian. I'm gonna go with that. Relaxian, where he sells like tool upgrades or like house upgrades, things like that.
Useful person to know.
He's the guy. He does it all. He has this particular issue, and this happens with a lot of characters in Lulu Coco, but his is particularly egregious. And this is one of my main issues with this game, where there is a very, very distinct difference in his skin tone between his sprite and his character art for when you're talking to him. where his character art is significantly lighter skinned. Like, noticeably, jarringly, significantly lighter. Because most people in Lulu Coco have darker skin tones.
Because it's clearly based off a, Pacific Island type region.
Very Polynesian themed.
That's the word.
And it's really jarring. It's really off-putting to me. So that main issue aside, we have Ludus, and then your other two marriage candidates are a set of twins who are the women who you will notice. 2 guys and 1 girl in West Town, 1 guy and 2 girls in Lulu Coco. So we have Iluka and Siluka, who are
the best.
The faves of this podcast.
Yeah.
So
it's funny because, I mentioned that I had that moment where I come across a new town and I'm like, oh, everything changes here and I'm not really sure what to do. And then you meet, specifically I met Iluka and I was like, well, that's decided for me then. That was not a hard decision.
Screw you, Lisette. I'm marrying Iluka. And I'm a huge fan of Siluka. So she's my favorite. She's my favorite of all the marriage candidates. So they're twins. And they sort of have 2 roles. They run the cafe of Lulu Coco, which is called Carosello.
Yeah, I'd go with that.
Words are hard. And they're also like sort of like culturally, they're like the priestesses of the culture. So like they go and like do fancy dances at the temple and stuff and do their thing. All 3 of those characters definitely have a very, very sibling type of relationship, where they treat each other like they're all just siblings. They function that way. A huge part of like Ludus's storyline, like if you choose him as a romance option, is like, please don't treat me like I'm your sister, like you do with Iluka and Siluka. Iluka is the more kind of hot-headed and energetic sister, and Siluka is the more like quiet and calm sister. So they're great. I love them.
I think they work really well together as well. Like when you're going through the storyline of the 2 of them, they're not. They start off feeling just tropes, but I think they work quite well in how they actually come across. And they're not like they don't completely stay within the stereotype boxes that they're given. Which is quite interesting. Although so there's a point if you go down the Iluka route, there's a turn where I always get really confused because they ended up changing it, they swapping it so much, but like they both pretend to be each other at one point.
Yes.
And I got really confused as to what it actually, but I'm pretty sure that they both end up being each other at different points.
Yeah.
So you think you're talking to Iluka and you're actually talking to Siluka, and then the other way around as well.
But there's 2 different events where they both switch roles.
Yeah, and they both end up feeling really bad about it, which doesn't fit in with what you'd kind of expect with their tropes. You wouldn't expect Siluka to ever try that, and you wouldn't expect Iluka to feel really bad about it.
Yeah, it's definitely. They both have that cutscene where it's essentially like the twin trope of like, I'm going to test you to see if you can tell me apart from my twin.
Yeah.
But then it's like, it's done in a way where like, Siluka's not really a prankster. You don't really expect her to do that. You never expect Iluka to feel bad about anything. She's very like hot-headed and very stubborn. But also very sweet. Like there's an entire like, there's a cutscene where like you hear a story of Iluka, like as priestesses, they're supposed to like help the people of the town, and Iluka like charged some random villager like an exorbitant amount of money to like do this service for him, like 15,000 money. And you're like, why would you do such an awful thing? And then later you learn like from Siluka, like Siluka is very much into studying like herbal medicine and stuff like that. And she's like, Iluka was very sweet. She bought me this book that I needed for my studies, which conveniently happened to cost exactly as much as she charged this other villager. So there's a lot of, Iluka is never very direct about things, but she also, usually is good-hearted and has, good intentions for whatever she does.
Yeah.
The twins are great. I love them.
Me too.
They are the official faves of the harvest season.
Yes, the official faves.
The official faves. So next on the list is the Lulu Coco Town Guardian, who is witchy. She's a little witch type character. Thematically, does it match? No. She's the only one who does not match thematically at all. But she's a little witch. She's a little stinker. She's kind of rude and abrasive and
a prankster in some ways as well.
Yes, very much. You can, if you go to her, if you give her specific items, she will change your appearance. I think you have to give her a Lulu Coco fruit, but it has to be on a particular day of the week. And if you do it any other day of the week, she will decrease your relationship with other people. Which sounds awful, but can be useful, I guess. If in a single save file you want to date everybody, you can only date one person at a time, and to get them to stop dating you, you have to make them hate you. And so that's the purpose of that. But that's the kind of character Witchy is. Either one day a week she helps you, or the rest she doesn't.
Yeah.
I believe she explicitly at some point is I hate humans. So
big mood.
Big mood. I feel you, Witchy. Then our town leader is Ludus's grandmother, who is Tototara. She's a very sweet old lady. She runs the inn, which is called Lala Salama. You can spend the night there, just so you know, if you want.
Yeah, I don't think I've actually done that. And I'm not sure why you would.
I did once, because I happened to be in Lulu Coco very, very late and was not going to make it home before I passed out. But I don't know, there's not much of a reason to, I don't think. If there is, I haven't found it.
Yeah.
So, but she's just a very nice old lady.
She is, but I think she's also in some ways, not in a mean way, but in some ways scheming. She's definitely trying to kind of, make things happen the way she thinks they should be happening.
Mm-hmm. She, in that very, very, I was going to make a reference to something I don't necessarily think I should, but she's very much that character who's I'm nice as a facade so that you don't notice my scheming so much. But she is genuinely nice. She just also is very scheming. And then we have the next family in Lulu Coco is Kaolila, Zahao, and who are married, and then their children, Alma and Shulk, which other characters who I wish I could marry but are married. I would 100% marry Kaolila or Zahao.
Yeah. I do love their kids, though. They are great.
Oh, they're so cute. They're my favorite of all the kids. So Kaolila she farms, and she also runs the local grocery store, which is called Aquapazza. And Zahao is the capital F fisherman of the town. And then they have their adorable kids, the little girl named Alma and the little boy named Shulk.
I just love how excited Alma gets if you end up in a relationship with Iluka, or I presume Siluka as well. She's just ridiculously overexcited about it and tries to kind of make it, tries to speed it up, but actually makes it really awkward instead.
Yeah, it's really cute. She's 100%, if you date the sisters, she's your biggest fangirl. She's I've been shipping this forever. It's so cute. And Shulk is really cute. Like he's definitely like one of those kids that's like, I definitely think I'm an adult. Where he tries to be like, I'm the strongest person here and I'm great. And you're just like, you're a cute, tiny little kid, but keep trying. You're doing good. They both really, really are emotionally invested in you dating the marriage candidates of Lulu Coco. Like, we have that whole thing with Luca and Saluka, but also with Ludus. If you date Ludus, there's an entire cutscene of like, Ludus can't figure out why his shop's not getting business and no one's talking to him. And then they find out that it's because Alma and Shulk are going around saying like, they're on a date, leave them alone. Like, it's really cute. And then the next sort of family we have comes in later, actually. They are not there when you first unlock Lulu Coco. But you have Haolani and Tiger? Tiger? I'm not sure. So Haolani is an old friend of Tototara's and a martial arts teacher, and he brings along his grandson, Tiger, the small kid with the white hair. And they, I guess, used to like travel a lot and eventually came back to home base at Lulu Coco. They're fun little characters.
Yeah, I never really got to know
Tiger,
them, I think.
Yeah, they're very kind of like quiet and mysterious. Tiger in particular has this sort of trope of like the kid who's wise beyond his years, of just like, I'm very adult, but I'm clearly also a literal child. And Haolani, he's pretty good. Not Haolani. Yeah, Haolani. I can remember names. Haolani's pretty good natured. You find out he's a martial arts teacher and is like a very strict martial arts teacher, and you're just like, I can't handle this. Like, and you nope out. So, trivia fact, the two people he teaches sword fighting to, which I guess is a martial art, is Tiger and Kaolila. Just randomly Kaolila, who is amazing in every way.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Why not? And then to round out the end of the Lulu Coco cast, we have Mithra and Lotus.
Yeah. I presume that you probably have similar opinions to me, but I have some issues with these two.
So Mithra is like, I'm going to say an archaeologist, essentially, who is investigating like the mysterious ruins of the town, and Lotus is her assistant. Do you want to say what you have to say?
I do not like the chemistry they create around these two, where Mithra is clearly meant to be like the domineering kind of headmistress kind of character, and Lotus is just would never stand up for himself and just does whatever he's told, but really just hates her behind her back, sort of thing. I really don't like that at all.
Yeah, like it's definitely 100% played as like Mithra is very angry and stubborn and very insistent that she's always right. And she's very, very put downy and almost kind of abusive towards Lotus, who is very capital S submissive, scaredy cat kind of a character.
I didn't want to use the word abusive, but I feel like it does
feels that
come
way,
towards
though.
that, but
because she very frequently like is putting him down and telling him he's stupid and harassing him for being clumsy, and
and it's never in a trying to improve him sort of way. It is purely just to be mean. Yeah,
it is very clearly like, you were a failure, and I think you're less of a person than that person for that. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, and it makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah. I mean, I disliked it so much that I just didn't bother doing anything with them that I didn't have to. Like, I actively avoided talking to either of them because I just didn't want to see the interactions.
Yeah, I feel. I talk to Lotus a lot because I'm like, I believe in you, man. You're okay. He's a good guy. He's just very scared and nervous and clumsy.
I feel like he has, I feel like he's going to crack one day and kill her.
Right? Oh my gosh.
Like he clearly has
That's
like
so
a
wild.
lot of underlying resentment for her, which I understand. But yeah, I feel like I think he needs to talk to someone about it. Like it's gonna go badly at some point.
Yeah. And like, I also don't like that Mithra very much kind of plays into this, like, how do I say this without swearing? This trope of like the cold-hearted businesswoman. I don't know if that rings without like the sort of like name of the trope, which I can't say because it involves swearing.
No, I think I know the word you mean.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of where I was getting the kind of, I don't know whether the headmistress kind of trope is a cultural thing. Like I don't know whether that doesn't exist for you.
It might be more of a cultural thing on your end.
Yeah.
Because we don't have headmistresses of things.
Yeah,
here.
I guess that in itself is probably a cultural thing. Have you ever seen Matilda, the film?
Yes.
Yeah, so like the headmistress in that.
Yeah.
Like that.
We're just like this like aggressive,
Exactly.
heartless, domineering kind of like leadership role person.
Yeah.
That takes on a particularly like sexist tone to it because it's always a woman. Because when a man is like that, you're like, oh, he's a serious businessman. And when it's a woman, she's a cold-hearted B word. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
like,
yeah. I definitely know what you mean. Yeah, the man is just taking charge, but the woman is just being cold-hearted, and yeah, I don't like it.
Yeah.
It rubs me the wrong way in so many ways, and yeah. Let's move on.
Same. So that's our Lulu Coco. Do you have any notes on Lulu Coco in general?
I like most of the characters in Lulu Coco. I think a wee bit more than West Town, although I think the ones that I dislike in Lulu Coco, I dislike a lot, whereas there aren't really any I dislike in West Town. It's just there are some in West Town I'm a little bit ambiguous towards, like just they're okay. I don't hate them, but I don't want to get to know them, whereas I think the ones that I like in Lulu Coco I really like.
Lulu Coco is more polarizing.
Definitely.
You either love them or you hate them.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I feel I like the Lulu Coco villagers a lot. I think they're fun. They have a lot of personality. They feel just a little bit less tropey than the West Town characters. And I mean like tropey in particularly in reference to like farming games. Where there's a lot of farming game tropes when it comes to casts of characters, and I feel like they don't play into that quite as much.
Yeah, I think that Iluka's clearly, the same sort of character that is, the standoffish, like you got to work hard to kind of get her affection sort of thing, but it's not done in a reasonably well done way. It doesn't feel too tacky, if that makes sense. I think that's the thing.
Yeah.
They do have some similar tropes, but they're not as obvious or as awkward to deal with, and they're a little bit deeper than just that.
Yeah, for sure. And in case you didn't think that was enough characters, so on Summer 5, you unlock the third town, which is Tsuyukusa, which is old-timey Japanese themed. I know there is a particular era of Japanese history that this is modeled off of, and I keep meaning to look it up, and I don't. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know what you mean though. And if you've played the game, you'll definitely know the style that we're talking about here.
Yes. It's very distinctive. I feel bad because my knowledge of Japanese history is not as great as it should be, and I'm bad and I'm sorry. I will do better. So
I have a lot of thoughts about this village. Well, I don't have a lot of thoughts about this village. I have some thoughts about this village, and I'm not sure whether the thoughts should come up front or at the end. But when you know the thought, you'll probably understand why I'm not sure where it should go.
Yeah. Let's go through.
Okay.
And wherever it becomes relevant, spit it out.
I think if we're just going to go through, it will only become relevant at the end, and you'll understand why when we get there.
So this town has not 3, not even 4, but 5 marriage candidates. So first the ladies, you have Komari, who is the waitress at the cafe. She's very much played as like, I'm the country girl. I clearly have a country accent. Like kind of like,
I never put that on her, but
well, I mean, her dialogue is literally written with like lots of apostrophes, taking out G's and stuff like that. And I think that's also like a translation error where like she's clearly meant. I'm pretty sure in the Japanese she's meant to like have an accent from a particular region of Japan, and how that usually gets translated when things get translated for the United States is I'm a country person. And it's not just this game, like that's something that happens in a lot of media that comes over from Japan. I can think of like Sailor Moon in particular had like the BFF character who was played off as a like not a country person, but like I clearly have like I can't do accents. I'm sorry. I'm not even going to try. But like I clearly have a particular accent because from a particular region of the US because there's no real equivalent in Japan. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. It's hard to translate some cultural things like that. That's always going to be the issue in the global world that we live in.
And that's Komari. Then you have Kasumi, who is a teacher, and she definitely like falls into this like cold-hearted man-hating stereotype. I believe they literally explicitly state she hates men in the story.
Yeah.
And she's the teacher for the kids. And then on the guys' side, we have Hinata, who's he's very cheerful and peppy. He is an aspiring actor kind of character. Who he works part-time and is also just really trying to make it in the acting world. And then you have Yuzuki, who is like, I'm the quiet, gentle, sickly character, who is also an artist. Like, I was thinking about this earlier, because there's also a character like this in My Time at Portia, and I was thinking about it because of that. There's like a trope of the sickly character who you have to help them get better. Like you have Yuzuki in this game, you have Ginger in My Time at Portia, you have Felicity in Rune Factory. Like, this is a trope.
It's funny the tropes that end up, or the things that end up becoming tropes, really, isn't it? Like, out of all the possible, human existences, some tropes are really weird.
Yeah. But yeah, his thing is kind of, I feel like it's like the opposite of like the thing with Ford. So like, actually, no, now that I think about it, that's not quite what I meant to say. I think the motivations between romancing them are very similar to Ford, where like with Ford, it's this motivation to like fix somebody. And then with Yuzuki, it's a motivation to fix somebody, but in a more like caregiving sort of way, as opposed to going to almost like a manipulative, I'm going to tinker with your life and fix you sort of way that you get with Ford, which is weird. And that's 4 balanced out. So all the genders balance out. You have an equal number of candidates. If you're a guy or a gal, you can only marry your opposite gender. So, but then there's one more marriage candidate in this town, who is also the town guardian. And this is Inari, who's very much a fox spirit character, who So Inari is programmed to always be the opposite gender of your character. So like their character design is very gender neutral. And if you play as a guy, Inari will always be a woman. And if you play as a gal, Inari will always be a man. But plays essentially the same way either way. I think there are very minor artistic differences where like if Inari is a woman, they try and make them look a little bit more diminutive as opposed to like more strong and confident if they're a man. That's a thing. Yes. Yeah. Inari is played as more of like the more mature of the 3 town guardians.
Yeah. Yeah, she automatically saying she, but you can guess okay. What gender my character in the game was. They are definitely, definitely the mature one. Like, oh, I can't believe you're doing, these immature things. And...
I definitely think that of the 3, Inari seems more mature, but also like better at their job. Like Witchy just doesn't try and help at all, and like help in the sense of like taking care of the town, which is essentially their job. Witchy doesn't try and help at all. Desi tries really hard to help, but kind of has this, you get this feeling like Desi is like kind of overwhelmed, like not the greatest at the job. Inari is like, this is my job and this is my responsibility and I do it well. And then moving on, you have the town leader, who is Jinjiro, who is Kamari's dad, and he runs the cafe, which is called Tiful Reunion.
Yes.
He is aggressively cheerful. Is that a good way to put it?
That's such a great description of it.
He's got way too much energy for me.
He's so enthusiastic about everything.
He's extremely enthusiastic about everything, and he does lots of puns and jokes and...
Yeah, even his shop is a pun.
Tearful reunion, as opposed to tearful.
I mean, it took
reunion.
me ages to figure out what the pun actually was meant to be, but it's a pun nonetheless.
Yeah, it is wild.
Even after I figured out what it was, I spent ages going, "Is that really what it is, or am I misunderstanding this?" I'm just like, I don't get it.
Yeah, I feel. I'm gonna reorder this a little bit. So then we also have Moria and Sumomo. So Moria is this very like off-putting, angry, stubborn, perfectionist kind of a guy who runs the wholesale store. He's the only person who actually employs other characters. So there are 3 essentially counters where you can buy different things at his store. You can buy just general goods, which he hires Hinata to sell those things. And then there's a grocery option and a clothing store option, which are run by Itetsu and Shizu, who we'll get to in a minute. So Moria's very angry, and he's like the man version of Mithra, basically.
I don't know, maybe I haven't spent enough time with him, but I've never really considered him angry so much as just, I don't know how to describe it, just he doesn't really care, or doesn't really like he's certainly not, happy or excited or anything, but I wouldn't have really considered him as angry so much as just not really caring about anything. I don't know. Maybe I've just not spent enough time with him.
He's very miserly. And I think part of the reason I feel like he's angry is because, so Sumomo is one of the children of the town. She's essentially elementary school age, and her whole story is that like she doesn't really have a family, and she was taken in by Moria and lives in a little house out back, and essentially is a catch-all assistant for Moria's shop. And she's played as very like hardworking and cheerful, but very clumsy. And a lot of Moria's character is yelling at Sumomo and being like, "You need to be better. You're a failure. Do better." At a literal child, which is not good. And I think that's part of like my distaste for him. I do like he has a my wife backstory where like his backstory is that like he used to be a nicer guy, but then he fell in love and was going to get married, but then she ended up stealing all his wealth and then running away and breaking his heart. And therefore he must be cold and heartless to other people. And I don't like that. Yeah,
that's not healthy. I certainly haven't come across that, but story. Yeah, that's
which is
not
fine.
not a good way to be.
Yeah, so I'm not a fan of Moria. And then our next family is one of our farmer families, which is Shizu and Itetsu, and their children Tatsumi and Yaichi. Itetsu is kind of like a very quiet guy. He's a farmer. He runs the grocery store at the wholesale store. And then his wife Shizu is she's a little bit gossipy and played as like, I'm the gossipy, like very pretty, fashionable kind of character. She runs the clothing store. And then Tatsumi and the younger brother, Yaichi, are like the little boys who run around town and pull pranks and do stuff. Those kinds of characters. I don't know if you have anything to say about them.
Not really, no.
There is a really cute little cutscene where a bunch of the villagers are trying to play a game, and they're like, because Yaichi is played as very, very young, like he's barely not a toddler, and they're like, what's Yaichi's favorite thing? And they're like being like, is it this food? Is it this thing? And in the end, it's like, it's his family. It's really cute.
Yeah. I think this. Let's go on to the last bit, and then I've got something to say.
Okay. You can make it. We're almost done. So then our other farmer family is Umakichi and Omio, who are an older couple farmers. They're very much played as like the cheerful, lovable old couple. Everybody's grandma, grandpa kind of characters. What do you have to say?
Yeah, so I mean, you'll probably have noticed I've not had much to say in this town. And I think going from West Town to Lulukoko was, oh wow, loads more things to do, loads more people to talk to. This is great. Going from Lulukoko to Tsuyukusa was, oh, yay, more stuff to do and more people to meet. It very definitely felt when I was entering this town that I think I met enough people.
Mm-hmm.
So purely because it's the last town you unlock, I didn't really get to know anyone in the town, because it's a lot of work to keep up these relationships and to even, develop them anywhere. And I was already taking up a lot of my time with the ones I wanted to get to know in the other two towns. And so I never really, the town in general, I didn't really get to know that much at all. I did the few things, bought the few things that I needed to buy there to finish the farming tips and stuff. And I obviously built up the rank, but I built up the ranking purely, I think, by mostly just doing the shipping to there. I just, there was something about it that it just felt like it was too much by that point.
Yes, which I think is a really good, legit criticism of this game, which is that, like, the idea on paper of the gimmick of 3 towns is very fun. Like, there's a lot of different characters.
Yeah.
There's kind of like a character for everybody. Absolutely. With a lot of variety. But in practice, you can get burnt out real fast. So, like, I tend to notice that a lot of people tend to focus on, like, I'm just going to focus on this particular town, one or the other. Or like, I'm just going to focus on these 4 particular characters regardless of town, because there's just, you cannot keep up with anyone and everyone. No. Part of the reason I have so many hours in this game is because it takes so long even to just get to know the characters of this game, because there's so many of them. It can be very overwhelming. It's a lot. It is so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. This cast is huge. You want to round it out with the last few characters?
Let's do it. I don't think I'll have much to say about either of these two, because I don't think I had the DLC installed for very long before I paused playing. Yeah.
So this game has a DLC. You can get it outside of Japan now. It's relatively inexpensive. I think it was like 8 US Earth monies, or something like that.
Something like that.
Which it unlocks a whole bunch of extra little cutscenes, and in particular, it unlocks 2 new marriage candidates. And these are characters you know from playing the game. They come from like the festival circuit. So the first one is Stephanie, who is the MC for the festivals.
And unless I'm mistaken, I'm pretty sure you never hear her name unless you have the DLC, though. I think she's just referred to as MC up to that point.
Yes. She's played as very energetic and very heavily invested in being the best MC there ever was. And then you have Woofio, who is the judge for like animal-based competitions. So like the animal competition or the pet competition. He's a literal ghost in a fursuit. Spoilers. But if you follow his storyline, because his art is like, he's very clearly dressed in like a dog costume. And if you go through his storyline, they both have shorter storylines than other marriage candidates. But if you go through them, this is the most absurd character of this game. So you find out, if you go through his storyline, that his backstory is he ran away for some reason and got lost in the woods and was cursed to like be forever part of this costume, essentially. And he dies and he's just a ghost and he doesn't have a body and he's just like a sentient ghost possessed dog fursuit.
It feels like one of these things where obviously Woofio existed before the DLC and they were just like, wouldn't it be funny if we added Woofio as a marriage candidate? And it's like, yeah, okay, but like we don't want to, you know, have them take off the costume. So how do we get around that? And what's the story? And like someone probably brought it up as a joke that, oh, how about if they were just a ghost in a fursuit? And they're like, yep, sounds good.
Yep. You do at the end, if you end up marrying Woofio, all of the guardians get together and they uncurse him and give him back a body. And then he's like, but I'm so used to being in the costume, I don't want to take it off. And he never does. Although in the DLC, there is a cutscene you can get with anybody where at the end of the game, your dad comes and like officially gives approval to your farm. And if you happen to be married to Woofio at the he'll go off and like just talk to Woofio for a while. And at the end of the cutscene, after everybody leaves, Woofio goes, well, it was intimidating to meet your dad. Do you think I should have taken the costume off?
Oh dear, it's a bit late to ask that now, Woofio.
So those are all the main characters of the game. It's a huge cast. It's not even all the named characters. So like there's a whole bunch of just second tier NPC villagers in every town. And like a lot of them have names and stuff and run shops and stuff. We're not even going to talk about them.
Because I think this podcast has probably been
it's a lot.
Enough.
So it's been 100 years. 100 years of characters should just be the name of this episode.
Sounds good.
So, if you've played this game, write in, tell us what you think, tell us who your favorite characters are, give us your hot gossip on any of the characters. If you haven't played it, tell us what you think anyway. Tell us who you hate for no reason other than what we've said about them. Tell us who you love. Tell us which married couple you would break up to marry.
So you want this in a game as well then, right? Because Stuart on Slack was trying to make it out that I was crazy.
Friend of the
for
pod,
wanting this
Stuart.
feature. Yeah.
No, lots of people want that. A friend of the pod, Johnny, also wants that. Like, I want to be able to cause chaos and break up marriages.
It's like how when you played The Sims,
whoever I want.
You would just kill them in crazy ways. You just want to watch the world burn sometimes.
100%.
Great. Well, thank you, Rochelle, for talking to me about these characters. Obviously, you have obviously.
I hope you enjoyed my lecture.
You know a lot more of these characters than I do. And thank you, listeners, for coming along with us on this exciting story journey. I hope you heeded the spoiler warning.
Yeah. Story and characters. I hope not. I hope you listened anyway. You can't be mad at us, though. If you listened, we gave you warning. This was your choice. Don't complain. But yeah, story and characters are like my favorite part of these games. So like, I'm just like always happy to talk about them. I had to like cut out a bunch of the stuff I wanted to talk about because it's too long. But
yeah, we've been going for 2.5 hours.
100 years. So let's round this out real quick.
Yes.
Last thing we're going to address is that we're going to do a challenge for this game, as we did with Stardew Valley. But we got some feedback that it was not enough time, which you're right. It was not enough time.
2 weeks is not enough time.
No. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you this challenge this episode at the beginning of our coverage of Trio of Towns. So you'll have a number of weeks to play it. Multiple weeks. At least a month to play to do this challenge with us.
The reason she's not saying the number of weeks is because we're not 100% sure how many weeks it is. We have a vague list of episodes for the next few episodes, but we've still not definitely decided how many we're going to do. It's probably 6 weeks, but we'll see. Weeks. It might be 4 it might be 23,
who knows?
Let's
go 4 to 6 weeks. It's almost specific, but still vague. Perfect.
Just vague enough.
So this time, we're going to have our own little festival competition.
Ooh.
So in this game, the way the festival competitions work is you bring your best item of whatever it's about. You bring your best crop or your best animal or whatever, and you have them judged against other participants to see who has the best one based on stats like how well trained your animals are or how shiny their coats are. Or for crops, it's based on their stats of like, there's 5 stats of like juicy or sweet or the size and stuff like that. So I don't really want to be limiting and say, let's have a crop competition. So I'm going to say, bring your 3 best items. Be it a crop, be it an animal, or an animal byproduct, whatever. Make something on your farm and bring your 3 top items. And in the end, we'll compare them all and judge who is the best farmer. Sound good?
It's going to be interesting to decide what exactly we choose to judge them on, and none of it matters anyway because Rochelle will win.
No, not necessarily. We'll
see.
Yes, we will base the judging in the same way that they do with whatever the respective festival is. So like if you bring crops, we'll judge them based on the crop stats or the animal stats for animals. Or like if you bring a cooked dish, it'll be based on like the stats for the cooked dish. Like they do in the cooking festival. You only have 3 rule restrictions here. First, you start a new save. Second, you start your new save on veteran mode. So I don't think we talked about this because it's a mechanic and this isn't the mechanics episode, but there are 2 modes you can play this game in, seedling or veteran. Veteran is essentially normal mode and seedling is easy mode. So you have to play on veteran mode, you have to start from a new save, and you can't play past the end of year 1. So if for some reason you have so much spare time like I do, and you play so much, if you hit the end of year 1, stop, pick out your best things, and you can't work on getting better things past that.
That's you done.
You're
Stop
done.
Cooking.
Stop fertilizing your plants.
I don't know if that reference is cross-cultural or not. Probably not.
It's probably not. Sorry.
It's all right.
Hate to disappoint.
I'll explain it later.
Does that sound good?
That sounds great. I look forward to beating you this time.
Do it.
Yeah.
Challenge accepted.
Great. All right. Well, I think this podcast has been long enough. Thank you all for listening. That's a lot of information to do. Well done if you got through this far. Because that has been quite an episode.
An episode for the true fans.
Absolutely. I mean, it was a real mistake, whoever it was that said that they wanted more information from Rochelle. Well, I don't think you'll ask for more again. So thank you all for listening. You can find our website at harvestseason.club, where you can also send us an email if you wish. If you wish to be cool like Farmer Ben and send us an email. Or you can find us on Twitter at THSPod. Or if you want to find us individually, I am at the ScottBot.
And I'm at Miss Delaney with 2 L's.
And we would love to hear from you.
tweet me.
Yeah.
Tweet us, email us, tell us how your challenge is going, tell us how you feel about the characters in Trio of Towns. Just say hello.
Great. Thank you for tuning in and keep farming. Is that what we say?
Have a good harvest.
Have a good harvest.
The Harvest Season is created by Rochelle Delaney and Al McKinley. Our art is done by Maker the Brave, and our music is done by Nick Burgess. Feel free to visit our website, theharvestseason.club, for show notes, including links to things we discussed and transcripts for every episode. Thanks for listening.
And then the outro plays.
Yeah. Look, it's 11:20, okay?
This is a long episode. There's so many characters.
This was a very long episode.
This is why I wanted to cut out most of the news.